Elena Carter opened her eyes to cold sheets beside her. The California king bed felt enormous when you slept alone, and these days, she always slept alone. The clock read 6:47 a.m., which meant James had left at least 2 hours ago. She could tell by how pristine his pillow looked, barely dented, as if a ghost had slept there. Sitting up slowly, Elena wrapped herself in the silk robe hanging on her bedpost. The penthouse apartment stretched out before her, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that cost more than most people earned in a year. 32 floors above Seattle, the view was breathtaking. The loneliness was suffocating. In the kitchen, she made coffee in the expensive Italian machine James had bought last Christmas. He probably thought it was romantic. Elena would have preferred him home for Christmas morning instead. She scrolled through her phone and found his text from 4:58 a.m. Big presentation today. Home late. Don't wait up. No heart emoji. No, I love you. Just facts delivered like a weather report. Elena had met James Whitmore 5 years ago at a charity gala. She was working as an event coordinator, wearing a borrowed dress and hoping nobody noticed her discount heels. He was the keynote speaker, the young tech entrepreneur everyone wanted to meet. When he walked straight past a crowd of admirers to talk to her, Elena thought she was dreaming. Their first date lasted 12 hours. They talked about everything from childhood dreams to favorite books to whether pineapple belonged on pizza. James made her laugh until her stomach hurt. He listened to her stories about growing up in a small Oregon town like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever heard. When he kissed her goodnight, Elena felt something she'd only read about in novels. The courtship was a whirlwind. James sent flowers to her office every week. He surprised her with weekend trips to wine country. He introduced her to his business partners and asked her opinion on his projects. 6 months in, he proposed on the beach where they'd had their first picnic. Elena said yes before he finished asking. The wedding was perfect. The first year was beautiful. James still made time for weekly date nights. They cooked dinner together on Sundays. He asked about her day and actually listened to the answers. Elena had never been happier. Then TechCore Solutions landed its first major contract. Suddenly, date nights were rescheduled. Sunday dinners became takeout eaten separately. The conversations grew shorter, more distracted. James was building an empire, and Elena told herself she needed to be supportive. Success required sacrifices. Year 2 brought more contracts, more employees, more responsibilities. James left earlier and came home later. Business trips multiplied. Elena tried to be understanding. She decorated their new penthouse alone. She attended company events and smiled for photos, playing the role of the supportive wife while James networked and talked shop. By year 3, Elena barely recognized her marriage. They existed in the same space but lived separate lives. James slept beside her but never touched her. They ate meals together in silence. Every attempt Elena made to connect was met with distraction or exhaustion. She started wondering if he even noticed she was there. Now, in year 4, Elena knew the answer. He didn't notice. She was furniture, wallpaper, part of the apartment's elegant design. Functional but unremarkable. Last Tuesday, Elena had dressed up and gone to his office unannounced, hoping to surprise him for lunch. His assistant, a crisp woman named Patricia, had looked embarrassed. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore is in meetings until 7 tonight. He has a working dinner after. Perhaps you could schedule something for next month? Elena had stood there in her new dress, holding a picnic basket like an idiot, while James's assistant penciled her into his calendar like any other appointment. She'd driven home in a fog, the untouched sandwiches on the passenger seat mocking her. That night, she'd lain awake while James snored softly beside her, and something inside her finally broke. Not with dramatic flair or angry tears, but with quiet, devastating clarity. This was her life now. This was her future. Unless she changed it. Wednesday morning, Elena called a divorce attorney. Thursday afternoon, she filled out paperwork at the kitchen table while James was at yet another meeting. Friday evening, she read through the documents 3 times, her hands shaking. Saturday, she put them in a manila envelope and waited. James came home at 9 on Saturday night, earlier than usual but still late enough that dinner had gone cold. Elena heard him in his home office, on yet another conference call. She stood outside the door for 10 minutes, envelope in hand, gathering courage. When she finally knocked, James barely looked up. "Come in." Elena entered the pristine office, all dark wood and leather. James sat behind his massive desk, laptop open, phone on speaker. He gestured for her to wait while he finished discussing quarterly projections. 5 minutes passed. Elena's heartbeat thundered in her ears. When James finally ended the call, he glanced at her with mild curiosity. "What's up? Everything okay?" Elena walked forward and placed the envelope on his desk, right on top of his spreadsheets. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like smoke. James stared at the envelope, then at her, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. He opened it with trembling fingers and pulled out the papers. Elena watched him read, saw the exact moment comprehension hit. His face went white. "Elena, what is this? What are you doing?" "I'm leaving." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what?" James stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "We have everything. The apartment, the cars, you can buy anything you want. I want a husband." The words came out sharp. "I want someone who sees me. Who talks to me. Who remembers I exist. That's not fair. I work hard to give you this life. I never asked for this life, James. I asked for you." He ran his hands through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. "When did you become so unhappy?" The question nearly made her laugh. "When did I become unhappy? Try asking when I stopped being happy." 2 years ago, James. Maybe 3. I've been drowning right in front of you, and you never even noticed. You never said anything. I said plenty. You just weren't listening." Elena's voice cracked. "I tried date nights. You canceled them. I tried surprising you at work. Your assistant blocked me. I tried talking. You fell asleep. I tried everything except disappearing completely, and somehow, I did that anyway." James looked at the papers again, then at her. His eyes were red. "Please. Don't do this. Give me a chance to fix it." "How many chances, James? How many times do I beg for scraps of your attention before I realize I deserve more? I'll change. I promise. Just tell me what you need. I need you to have wanted to change before I filed for divorce." Elena's composure was cracking. "I need you to have cared enough to notice I was miserable. I need the man I married, not the workaholic stranger who sleeps in our bed. Elena, please." She shook her head. "I'll stay in the guest room tonight. Monday, I'm moving to my sister's place in Portland. Sign the papers or don't. Either way, I'm done." Elena turned and walked out, leaving James standing behind his desk, divorce papers in hand, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. In the guest bedroom, she finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from relief. She'd said it. She'd done it. For the first time in years, Elena had chosen herself. In his office, James Whitmore stared at his wife's signature on the divorce decree and realized he'd lost something irreplaceable while chasing things that didn't matter. His phone buzzed with another work email. For the first time in 4 years, he didn't check it. James didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office until dawn, staring at the divorce papers, reading them over and over like they might say something different the 10th time. They didn't. His wife wanted out, and he'd been too blind to see it coming. At 5 a.m., he did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He called his assistant Patricia and told her to cancel everything. Every meeting, every conference call, every lunch appointment. She sputtered in shock, reminding him about the investor presentation, the board meeting, the Singapore deal. Cancel it all, he repeated. Family emergency. When Elena emerged from the guest room at 8, exhausted and red-eyed, she found James in the kitchen attempting to make pancakes. Flour dusted the counter, eggshells floated in the batter, and smoke rose from the pan. He looked up when she entered, hope and desperation written across his face. "I made breakfast," he announced, presenting a plate of lumpy, burnt pancakes like they were a Michelin star meal. Elena stared at the disaster. "You've never made breakfast." "I know. I'm sorry. I should have." He set the plate down. "Elena, please. Give me 1 day. Just 1 day before you leave. Let me show you I can change." She wanted to say no. Wanted to protect her heart from more disappointment. But something in his face stopped her. He looked terrified, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen since their wedding day when he'd cried during his vows. "1 day," she said quietly. "That's all." James exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." He suggested they go to Riverside Park, the place where they'd had their third date 5 years ago. Elena remembered that day vividly. They'd brought sandwiches and cheap wine, talked for hours on a blanket under an oak tree. It was the day she'd realized she was falling in love with him. The park looked the same. The oak tree still stood in the corner, its branches heavy with summer leaves. James spread out a blanket, and they sat down with coffee and muffins from her favorite bakery. He'd remembered which kind she liked. That small detail made her chest ache. "Talk to me," James said, setting his phone face down on the blanket. "Really talk. I'm listening." Elena didn't know where to start. 4 years of loneliness couldn't be summarized in a conversation. But she tried. "Do you remember our first anniversary?" she asked. James nodded. "We went to that Italian restaurant downtown." "No. That was our second anniversary. Our first anniversary, you were in New York for a conference. You called me at midnight, talked for 3 minutes, then said you had an early meeting." Elena's voice was flat. "I spent the whole day alone, wearing the dress I'd bought just for that night. The reservation went unused. I cried myself to sleep." James's face crumbled. "I don't remember that." "I know. That's the problem. I remember everything. Every missed dinner, every forgotten plan, every time you chose work over me. They're all stored in my head like scars. You don't remember because you weren't there." "Not really." "Tell me more," he whispered. "Tell me everything I missed." So she did. Elena told him about the time she'd had food poisoning and spent 12 hours alone, vomiting while he was at a product launch. About her birthday last year when he'd sent flowers from his assistant but forgot to call. About the night she'd tried to talk about starting a family, and he'd been answering emails the entire conversation, agreeing to things he clearly hadn't heard. James listened to every word, tears streaming down his face. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "I'm so sorry. God, Elena, I'm so incredibly sorry. I was building this company thinking I was building our future, but I destroyed our present. I destroyed us. Why did you stop seeing me?" Elena asked, the question she'd wanted answered for years. "What changed?" James was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing changed. That's the terrifying part. I just got comfortable. You were there, solid and constant, and I took that for granted. I thought you'd always be there, so I stopped trying. The business was demanding and exciting, and you were easy and familiar. I chose wrong every single time. Do you even love me anymore?" The question hurt to ask. "Love you?" James looked stricken. "Elena, you're the only thing I've ever truly loved. The company, the success, none of it means anything. I just forgot that. I forgot what mattered. He squeezed her hands. I know one day isn't enough. I know words are cheap. But if you give me a real chance, not just today but time, I will spend every day proving I've changed. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut back at work. I'll do whatever it takes. Elena wanted to believe him. The desperate, hopeful part of her that still loved him wanted to erase the divorce papers and go back to how things were at the beginning. But she'd been hurt too many times. Actions, James. Not promises. Show me. For the next 2 weeks, James did show her. He came home at 6 every evening. He cooked dinner with her, clumsy but trying. He put his phone in a drawer during meals and actually talked to her, asking questions and listening to answers. He planned a weekend trip to the coast, just the two of them, no laptops allowed. Elena felt herself softening. This version of James reminded her of the man she'd married. They laughed again. They talked for hours. They held hands on the beach and watched the sunset. One night, for the first time in over a year, they made love, and it felt like reconnecting with someone she'd lost. But doubt lingered. Was this real change or just panic? Would it last, or would James slide back into old patterns once he felt secure? The test came on a Thursday afternoon. James's phone rang during lunch. He glanced at the screen and declined the call. It rang again. And again. Finally, he answered. This better be important, Patricia. Elena watched his expression change as he listened. Excitement, calculation, conflict. When he hung up, she knew what was coming before he spoke. That was about the Meridian deal. The tech giant we've been courting for 8 months. They want to meet tomorrow in San Francisco. If we land this contract, it changes everything for TechCore. We're talking hundreds of millions. Elena's stomach dropped. Tomorrow is our anniversary. Our real one. The one you missed 4 years ago. James looked torn, genuinely conflicted in a way she'd never seen. I know. I remember. I have the reservation, the gift, everything planned. But you want to go to San Francisco. I don't want to. But this deal is massive, Elena. It's the biggest opportunity we've ever had. It could set us up for life. We're already set up for life, James. You have more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes. Elena felt the familiar ache returning. The question is, what matters more? The deal or me? That's not fair. You matter most, but this is my company, my responsibility to my employees. Then go. Elena stood up from the table. Go to San Francisco. Land your deal. Build your empire. But don't expect me to be here when you get back. Elena, please. Don't make me choose. I'm not making you choose, James. I'm telling you what your choice means. You can have the deal or you can have me working on our marriage. You can't have both. Not this time. James stared at her, phone in hand, the weight of the decision crushing him. This was the moment. The real test of whether anything had actually changed. Elena walked to the bedroom and started packing her suitcase. She heard James on the phone in the living room, his voice rising and falling. After 20 minutes, he appeared in the doorway. I told them no. Elena turned, shocked. What? I told Patricia to send Michael to San Francisco. He's the VP. He can handle it. I'm staying here with you. James's voice shook. I'm not missing our anniversary again. I'm not losing you for a contract. I don't care if it's $1 billion. You're worth more. Elena searched his face for resentment, for regret. She found only determination. That deal was everything you've worked for. No. You're everything I've worked for. I just forgot that for a while. He crossed the room and took her hands. I'm not perfect, Elena. I'll probably mess up again. But I swear to you, I will never stop choosing you. Not for work, not for anything. You are my priority. Finally, truly, you are. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. This was what she'd needed. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but proof that she mattered more than his ambitions. Still, fear whispered that it might not last. I want to believe you, James. But I'm scared. Then let's get help. Real help. Couples therapy, whatever we need. I'll do the work, Elena. I promise I'll do the work. Elena looked at her half-packed suitcase, then at her husband's desperate, hopeful face. This was the leap. The risk. The choice to be vulnerable one more time. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Let's try. James pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. And for the first time in years, Elena let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. 3 months after the almost divorce, Elena and James sat in Dr. Rachel Morrison's office for their weekly therapy session. The room was warm and calming, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Elena had been skeptical at first, but these sessions had become essential. Tell me about this week, Dr. Morrison said, her kind eyes moving between them. James spoke first. I struggled on Tuesday. We had a crisis at work, a server failure affecting 3 major clients. My instinct was to stay until it was fixed, even though it meant missing dinner with Elena. But you didn't stay, Elena added quietly. No. I delegated to my tech team and came home. I was anxious all evening, checking my phone constantly. Elena called me on it. Dr. Morrison nodded. And how did that conversation go? Better than it would have before, Elena said. I told him his anxiety was making me feel unimportant. He heard me. He put the phone away and actually focused on being present. The world didn't end. Progress, Dr. Morrison smiled. James, what did you learn? That my team is more capable than I gave them credit for. And that I used work as an excuse to avoid real intimacy. If I'm always busy, I never have to be vulnerable. James looked at Elena. I'm learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's connection. These were the moments that gave Elena hope. James was doing the work, not just showing up but actually changing. He'd cut his hours from 80 per week to 50. He'd promoted Michael to COO, sharing responsibilities he'd once hoarded. He'd started saying no to opportunities that would consume his time. But change was messy and imperfect. Last month, James had slipped into old patterns during a product launch, working late 3 nights in a row. Elena had felt the familiar panic rising, the certainty that nothing had really changed. They'd had their biggest fight since the divorce papers, both saying things they regretted. The difference was what happened after. James didn't dismiss her feelings or make excuses. He apologized genuinely and they created new boundaries together. No working past 7 except true emergencies. No phones during meals. 1 full weekend per month completely unplugged. I want to discuss something, Elena said, glancing at James nervously. I've been thinking about going back to work. James looked surprised but not upset. Really? Tell me more. I gave up my career when we got married. You said you made enough for both of us, and I thought being available would help our marriage. But I've been realizing that I lost myself. I need my own identity, my own purpose beyond being your wife. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. How does that make you feel, James? Honestly? Guilty. I never asked Elena to give up her career, but I benefited from it. I had a beautiful wife at home, someone to handle everything domestic so I could focus on work. He turned to Elena. If you want to work, I support that completely. What are you thinking about doing? Elena smiled, the first real excitement James had seen in her eyes for months. My old company reached out. They want me to head their event planning division. It's challenging work, good pay, something I'm passionate about. That's incredible, James said, and he meant it. When would you start? Next month, if I accept. It means I won't be home when you get there. I'll have my own deadlines and stress. Our life will be more complicated. Good, James said firmly. I don't want easy if easy means you're unfulfilled. I want equal partners building a life together, not me working while you wait around for scraps of my attention. Dr. Morrison smiled. This is significant growth for both of you. Elena, you're reclaiming your independence. James, you're supporting that instead of seeing it as a threat. How does that feel? Scary, Elena admitted. But good scary. Like I'm becoming myself again. Over the next few months, their life transformed. Elena threw herself into her new job, and James discovered he liked having a wife with her own stories, her own challenges, her own victories. They compared notes over dinner about difficult clients and workplace drama. They brainstormed solutions for each other's problems. They were teammates again. One evening in November, Elena came home exhausted from organizing a massive corporate gala. She found James in the kitchen, cooking her favorite pasta dish. Music played softly. Candles flickered on the table. "What's all this?" she asked, dropping her bag. "You've had a brutal week. I wanted to do something nice." James handed her a glass of wine. "Dinner's almost ready. Go relax." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. These gestures still caught her off guard, reminders of how far they'd come. She changed into comfortable clothes and returned to find James plating the pasta with the focus he used to reserve for contract negotiations. Over dinner, they talked about her gala, laughing about a mishap with the ice sculpture. James told her about a junior developer who'd impressed him with innovative code. It was ordinary, comfortable, perfect. "I need to tell you something," James said after they'd cleaned up together. "I got an offer this week. A huge one." Elena's heart sank. "What kind of offer?" "A venture capital firm wants to buy TechCore. Full acquisition. The number is staggering, Elena. We'd never have to work again. We could travel the world, do whatever we wanted. But you'd lose your company. Everything you built." James nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that. About what I actually built and what it cost me. The company almost destroyed our marriage. It made me someone I didn't recognize, someone who hurt the person I love most. James, I'm not asking you to sell your company. I know it matters to you. It does. But you matter more." He took her hands across the table. "I've been offered something else too. The acquiring firm wants me to consult part-time, advisory role only. 20 hours a week maximum, mostly remote. I'd have time for other things. For us. Maybe for a family, if you still want that." Elena's breath caught. They'd stopped talking about children years ago, when it became clear James had no room in his life for them. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything. I want a life with you, Elena. A real life, not just existing in the same space. I want lazy Sunday mornings and vacations where we actually relax. I want to be present if we have kids, not the dad who's always at the office." James's voice grew thick with emotion. "I almost lost you because I couldn't let go of success. I won't make that mistake again. This is a massive decision. You need to think about it." "I have thought about it. I've thought about nothing else for 2 weeks. Yes, giving up control of my company is hard. But losing you would have destroyed me. This isn't sacrifice, Elena. It's choosing what actually matters." Elena stood and walked around the table, pulling James into an embrace. He held her tight, and she felt the tension leave his body. They stood like that for a long time, just breathing together. "Are you sure?" she whispered against his chest. "Completely sure. 3 months later, Elena stood in the bathroom staring at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. She laughed through tears, simultaneously terrified and elated. When she showed James, he picked her up and spun her around, both of them crying and laughing. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, like he couldn't believe it. "We're really having a baby." That night, they lay in bed with James's hand on Elena's still flat stomach, talking about names and nursery colors and what kind of parents they wanted to be. "I'm going to mess this up sometimes," James said quietly. "The dad thing. I'll probably work too much or miss something important." "You will mess up," Elena agreed. "So will I. But we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do." "Partners," James repeated, smiling. "I like that. Not husband providing for wife, but equal partners." "It only took a divorce threat to get here," Elena teased gently. "Best worst thing that ever happened to me. I needed to almost lose you to realize what I had." James kissed her forehead. "Thank you for giving me another chance. For fighting for us even when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for actually changing. Not just promising, but doing the hard work." 7 months later, Elena went into labor on a Tuesday afternoon. James was beside her through every contraction, breathing with her, holding her hand, telling her how strong she was. When their daughter Sophia was finally born at 3:42 a.m., James cried harder than Elena had ever seen. "She's perfect," he whispered, cradling the tiny baby. "You're both perfect." In the quiet hospital room, with dawn breaking through the windows, Elena watched her husband hold their daughter with such tenderness and wonder. This was the man she'd married, the man she'd almost lost, the man who'd fought his way back to her. Their marriage wasn't perfect now. They still disagreed, still had hard days, still had to work at choosing each other. But the difference was they were both present for the work. They were both committed to the partnership. 2 years later, on their 7th anniversary, James planned a surprise. He took Elena back to Riverside Park, to the oak tree where they'd had their 3rd date and where he'd fought to save their marriage. A picnic was spread out, complete with champagne and strawberries. "What's all this?" Elena asked, bouncing Sophia on her hip. "Anniversary tradition. Every year, we come here and remember." James took Sophia so Elena could sit. "Remember the scared, disconnected people we were? Who almost gave up. I remember a man who chose love over ambition. Who did the hard work of changing. I remember a woman brave enough to demand what she deserved. Who didn't settle for being invisible." James set Sophia down on the blanket with her toys. "I want to renew our vows. Nothing fancy, just us and Sophia and new promises. Ones I'll actually keep this time." Elena felt her eyes fill with tears. "What kind of promises?" "To see you every day. To choose you every day. To never let work become more important than watching our daughter grow up. To be present, not perfect, but present." James took her hands. "To be your partner in all things, for the rest of our lives." "I promise the same," Elena whispered. "To communicate when I'm hurting instead of suffering in silence. To forgive imperfection while still expecting effort. To build a life where we both thrive, together." They kissed while Sophia clapped her chubby hands, not understanding but sensing the significance. In the distance, the city hummed with activity. People rushed to meetings, chased deals, built empires. James and Elena stayed under the oak tree, choosing presence over productivity, choosing each other over everything else. The divorce papers were locked in a drawer at home, kept as a reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. Some nights, when doubt crept in, Elena would remember those dark days. Then she'd look at James reading bedtime stories to Sophia, or laughing at dinner, or reaching for her hand without thinking, and she'd know they'd made it. Not back to how things were, but forward to something better. Something earned through honesty and effort and the courage to change. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real, present, and built on a foundation strong enough to last. And that was more than enough.